Right, welcome and thank you for joining. My name is Linda Denude and I'm a health educator for community health at Atlantic Health System. Today's webinar, Nutrition and Healthy Lifestyle for Cancer Prevention, is presented by Johanna Sakimura. Before we begin, I have a few announcements. This webinar is being recorded. All participants are muted. If you have a question, please use the Q&A feature and the chat for comments. We'll try to get through all questions at the end of the presentation. The first step to a healthier heart is knowing your risk level for heart disease. Please take 2 minutes to complete our online quiz and get your individual results. I am now going to turn it over to you, Johanna.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today. As Linda mentioned, my name is Johanna Sakimura, and I am a registered dietitian. I work at Overlook Medical Center at the Carol G. Simon Cancer Center at Overlook. And I am a certified specialist in oncology, or CSO, so a dietitian who specializes in working with oncology patients. So most of my day-to-day is spent working with patients that are either in treatment for cancer, getting chemotherapy or radiation or other treatments, or who are in their survivorship phase and looking to make healthy lifestyle changes after a cancer diagnosis and treatment. But occasionally I get to do these wonderful events looking really at cancer prevention and what we can do to try to reduce risk. And I'm so grateful that all of you have taken an interest in this and doing everything that you can to reduce your risk for some of the most common cancers. So like other chronic diseases, not everything is in our control. There are many genetic and other non-modifiable risk factors, family history, age, sex, ethnicity, and race, that contribute to cancer risk for many types of cancer. But certainly many of the most common types of cancer, like colorectal, breast, and other cancers, we do see that is a fairly strong modifiable component as well, which is where these changes that we can make to our nutrition, our health, our lifestyle changes can make a big difference. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So, one study found that 42% of cancer diagnoses were attributable to these modifiable risk factors, including, and you can see that biggest component is cigarette smoking. So that's sort of outside the scope of today's talk, but obviously a very big, healthy change you can make to reduce your risk for cancer and many other chronic diseases. So definitely take advantage of those great programs that Linda had highlighted at the beginning of the talk. We're going to focus on the lifestyle component today related to diet and exercise. So we see that, there's an 8% of cases are attributed to excess body weight or overweight or obesity. Another close to 6% attributed to alcohol, which is a known carcinogen, cancer-causing agent. Another 4.5% contributed to poor diet, which might include things like low intake of fruits and vegetables. And then another 3% attributed to being more sedentary or not as active. So modifying all of these factors by making some of the lifestyle changes we're going to discuss today can certainly have a big impact on your risk for certain types of cancer, as well as other chronic diseases. So all of the healthy lifestyle changes we're going to discuss today are not just going to apply to reducing cancer risk. They're going to reduce your risk for any chronic disease, including heart disease, diabetes, kidney disease, some of those major chronic diseases. It's really the same, there's some fine tuning, some things that are a little more specific here to certain types of cancer, but really it's the same general healthy guidelines that we would give for reducing your risk of any of these types of chronic disease. So there's sort of 3 pillars to a healthy lifestyle for cancer prevention, or even if you are a cancer survivor, many of these, again, same principles apply. We want to achieve and maintain a healthy weight, be as physically active as possible, and then follow a healthy diet pattern that emphasizes these whole plant foods, which is really going to be the focus of this talk: vegetables, whole fruits, beans and legumes, and whole grains, or what we call a more plant-based diet pattern. So we'll focus, I don't want to to underemphasize the importance of these first two components, which are maintaining a healthy weight and being physically active. But as a dietitian, I am going to sort of focus on that last piece, the plant-based diet today. But certainly, maintaining a healthy weight, we know has a big impact on reducing your risk for many types of cancers. And we'll see here that there are actually 13 different cancer types that are associated with overweight and obesity. So things from esophageal cancer to breast cancer, liver cancer, ovarian cancer, pancreatic, colorectal, all of these, we do see an increased risk in people that are overweight or obese. And there's a number of reasons for this connection. We know that body fat or adipose tissue is a very metabolically active tissue. It releases hormones and peptides and other, and other chemicals that can create an environment that's more hospitable to cancer growth. So, we do see, generally seeing with higher amounts of body fat, we see higher levels of insulin and insulin-like growth factor. We see an impact on sex hormones like estrogen. We see more inflammation, more oxidative stress. And these are components, metabolic components, again, that can create an environment that's more favorable to cancer growth. So reducing your body weight is certainly a way that you can reduce your risk for many types of cancer. Generally speaking, the quick sort of tool we use to assess body fatness is the body mass index. It is not a perfect tool. We know that. It is one way to assess body fatness, and kind of a quick tool that often physicians or clinicians will use. So we do, recommend trying to lower your body mass index, and focus on losing weight if you are overweight. But regardless of your body mass index, we know that losing 5 to 10% of body weight, so even if you never reach that goal range for body mass index, or even if that's not appropriate for you, losing 5 to 10% of body weight brings significant health benefits, and that would certainly translate to reduce risk for chronic diseases like heart disease, cancer, and diabetes, and others. And then the second, pillar that we're going to talk about briefly today to reduce cancer risk is being more physically active. And exercise tends to do a lot of the opposite, has the opposite metabolic effects of what we see from being obese or overweight, and that it's going to produce beneficial metabolic effects in terms of creating an environment that's less favorable to cancer growth. So we're talking about improving your sensitivity to insulin, and your body's ability to manage blood sugar, and improving inflammation, lowering inflammation, and lowering oxidation that can create these cancer, contribute to cancer cell formation. So the goal is from the American Cancer Society to aim for 150 to 300 minutes of moderate activity per week, or 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous activity per week to get these health benefits in terms of reducing cancer risk. Even if you're not there yet, again, this is all about improving and taking steps in the right direction. So if you're not exercising at all right now, adding 5 to 10 minutes of walking today is going to have a benefit. You don't have to be reaching all of these goals overnight, or even, really just taking steps in the direction of increasing your activity is going to have a huge benefit. And then limiting sedentary behavior. We know that, sitting for long periods of time during the day has a lot of unhealthy metabolic effects. And so trying to just move around and be more active during the day is certainly part of what you can do to control your risk for chronic disease. And just as a quick reminder in terms of what are we talking about with moderate activity versus vigorous. The vigorous, you're going to get your heart pumping a little bit more, and therefore the recommendations are a little bit shorter in terms of minutes per week. But moderate activity is going to be walking, dancing, bicycling, things like that, yard work. And vigorous would be things like jogging or running, aerobic dancing, swimming laps, again, things that are going to get your heart rate up a little bit higher more quickly. And the third pillar is going to be to follow a plant-based diet pattern. So plant-based is a very broad term. It does not mean vegetarian or vegan. You do not need to become a strict vegetarian or vegan to reduce your risk for cancer. It means eating more plant foods and making them a core focus of your plate. So a plant-based diet pattern is one that emphasizes, and a lot of people are looking for a number or something, in terms of what percent of your diet is made up of these foods. We're aiming for about 2/3 of your diet to come from these food groups. So, what are these core components of the plant-based diet? No surprise here, vegetables, especially the non-starchy vegetables. So, starchy vegetables include things like corn, peas, and potatoes, but we really want to emphasize those non-starchy vegetables, which is really everything else, like your peppers and broccoli and greens and carrots, and we'll talk more about veggies shortly. Um, Whole fruits, again, a wide variety of fruits. There's no best fruit or vegetable for cancer prevention, but trying to eat a variety and eat the rainbow is really the key. Whole grains, we'll talk more about those. Beans and lentils, a big one. I'm a huge proponent of eating more beans and lentils. Again, you don't have to be a strict vegetarian to add more of these plant-based proteins like beans and lentils to your diet. We just want to work on increasing the frequency and the amount of these in your diet. And then also nuts and seeds and heart healthy vegetable oils. Again, if the goal is to make this about 2/3 of your diet, that means the other 1/3 could come from all the other foods that comprise our diet, whether it be animal-based proteins like chicken, poultry, fish, red meat. It could also be dairy products, eggs, other animal-based foods. It could also be some of those other categories of food that are not comprised in these whole plant foods, things like refined grains or more snack type foods. Those can have a place in a healthy diet. But again, we want to focus on building that healthy foundation so that at least 2/3 of your diet is coming from these plant-based whole food groups. So now we'll dive into each element a little bit more in a little bit more detail. So pile on the produce. There is no maximum amount of produce. The more the better. The more servings of whole fruits and veggies, the better. Fruits and vegetables are loaded with antioxidants that have cancer fighting activity. So we want to eat, we do definitely see the evidence is clear that eating more whole fruits and vegetables reduces the risk for cancer and other chronic diseases. So these are some guidelines. I know people will oftentimes like numbers or like, sort of to quantify things, but really the more the better when it comes to fruits and vegetables. And uh, trying to eat, again, a colorful variety. So each color sort of indicates a different group or selection of antioxidants, generally speaking. So to get a full spectrum of all the vitamins and minerals and antioxidants or phytonutrients that plant have to offer, you want to try to eat a variety, eat according to what's in season, but go for color. Color, again, is a good indicator that it's a very nutrient dense food. Not to say that the white veggies like cauliflower or, don't have anything to offer, but again, color is just a good kind of quick indicator of foods you want to emphasize eat more often. So definitely the dark green leafy vegetables are loaded with just a whole host of vitamins and minerals. And that could be spinach, it could be collard greens, it could be turnip greens, it could be kale. I find that, there's always a hot new vegetable, and for a while it was kale and it got all the attention. But all those other leafy greens, like staple greens like turnip greens and beet greens and collard greens are just as nutritious as kale. So incorporating any of those into your diet regularly is a good thing. And then also the orange and red veggies they have lycopene, they have other very beneficial antioxidants. So things like bell peppers, carrots, have all these orange veggies also have beta carotene, another potent antioxidant. Sweet potatoes, squashes, winter squashes like butternut and acorn, all great things to try to incorporate into a cancer fighting diet more often. Cruciferous vegetables. So that's a family of vegetables. They all have these sulfur compounds, and you can sort of smell them when you cook many of these. Like when you cook cabbage, and your whole kitchen kind of has that odor. Those are those compounds that are releasing that smell are these potent sulfur containing compounds that have cancer fighting activity. So these are definitely another core group of vegetables to incorporate as part of a cancer fighting diet. And then also allium vegetables. So that includes onions, garlic. Again, they have cancer fighting compounds, so good to eat those frequently, and they add great flavor to food as well. And also, again, for lycopene, tomato products, so tomato paste, fresh tomatoes, again, a potent source of antioxidants, as well as whole soy foods. So soy milk, tofu, edamame, which are actually legumes, so they have the same benefits as beans and lentils. So incorporating more of these foods into your diet is a great way to, in the case of soy, get antioxidants, vitamins, minerals, fiber, and also plant-based protein. So the goal, going back to the good old my plate, the goal is to make half of your plate non-starchy vegetables and fruits at meals and really focus on increasing, if you're not getting much of these foods in your diet, just increasing from where you are currently. And this is another tool that we use to sort of guide healthy eating. This is more cancer specific. It's from the American Institute for Cancer Research, AICR, which is a great, great resource for information on diet and cancer. But they have created their own plate called the New American Plate. And again, the goal here is to make 2/3 or more of your plate vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and beans, and limit your portions of animal protein. So that could mean eating fewer meals with animal protein, or it could mean eating smaller portions of animal protein. Even those leaner, healthier options like chicken, fish, seafood, turkey, making them a little bit smaller portion of your plate and trying to emphasize those plant-based foods. So some quick tips to try to help you increase your intake of veggie intake. We want to try to focus on the meals you're already eating and bump up the produce in them. So if you are a pasta lover, a lot of times a plate of pasta is just noodles or, grains and sauce. But creating a pasta dish where you're trying to add a lot of non-starchy veggies right into the pasta, it could be, things that work great would be like roasted or sauteed zucchini, mushrooms, tomatoes, maybe peppers. Um, broccoli is great. You can do a great pasta and broccoli combination. So trying to add veggies to, and make half of your meal in terms of some like a mixed dish like a pasta dish, veggies instead of just the grains. Here's a stir fry. So a stir fry is a great way to get veggies in. And it's also and in line with more plant-based eating and eating a little bit less animal protein or eating smaller portions. A stir fry is a great way to stretch some animal protein, like if you do use chicken or shrimp, say, or lean beef in a stir fry, you can make that in a small portion of the stir fry and do mostly veggies. And that's a great way to make a meal out of that has some protein, animal protein, but uses less of it. Sandwiches, again, a standard sandwich might just have meat, cheese, and bread, but in this plant-based framework, we want to try to add a lot of veggies to the sandwich. So you can layer, look at this delicious grilled chicken sandwich layered with cucumbers, red pepper, I see carrots, sprouts, I see avocado, red onion. So they've really taken what could be just meat and cheese and bread and added a ton of veggies to it. And then soups, stews, chilies, another great way to get in veggies. And with these, this isn't baking. When it comes to cooking, you have a lot of flexibility. You don't have to follow the exact recipe. So when it comes to making soups and stews, use, if it calls for ground turkey or chicken or something, use less in the, cut the amount of meat in half and add more of the veggies, or even add a can of beans to it as a way to get more beans and lentils in your diet. Another pillar of the plant-based diet is going to be to choose whole grains more often. So, that breaks down into, we want to try to choose whole wheat bread in place of white or other refined breads. So ideally, we're looking for breads that have these words, 100% whole wheat. If it just says wheat or it just says whole grain, you don't know how much of it is actually whole grain. So you want to look for that 100% whole wheat or 100% whole grain. That means it's entirely whole grain bread. So that's really the ideal bread to choose. Brown rice in place of white rice. Now, you don't have to do this at every meal all the time. I know for a lot of people, for a lot of cultures, white rice is a staple of their diet. So you may swap out, every other time you do brown rice, or you work on cutting back on your portions of the white rice. But again, this doesn't have to be all or nothing. Nothing I'm talking about today has to be all or nothing. Small changes add up to great health benefits. So working some of these into your diet occasionally is better than never doing this, right? Whole grain pasta in place of white pasta. Again, it doesn't have to be every meal. It doesn't mean you never eat white pasta again, but trying to do more whole grain pastas, or even we're seeing a lot of bean-based pastas now, lentil pastas. Oatmeal is a whole grain. So in place of other hot cereals that are not whole grains, like cream of wheat, grits, farina, trying to do that more often. Whole grain cereals like shredded wheat or Cheerios or oat cereals or other whole grain cereals. There's so many on the market in place of refined cereals like cornflakes or other refined grain cereals. Whole grain crackers in place of your standard white crackers. Uh, and whole grain sides like farro, barley, quinoa, wheat berries, so many other great whole grains that you can make into side dishes or use in recipes, soups, stews, casseroles, things like that. And we want to try to, on the flip side, limit foods that are made with the refined flours, mostly, standard sort of white flour, all-purpose flour, things like many snack foods, cakes, muffins, cookies, pastries. Again, not that you can never eat these, but we're trying to reduce the frequency and eat more of the whole grain options. Another big component of a plant-based diet, and a big one, I think, the standard American diet is not very does not have a lot of beans and lentils in it. So, outside of maybe like baked beans. So this is really a goal I try to work on with a lot of my patients. Many of them are not eating much in the way of beans and lentils. So this is really an area of focus for adopting more plant-based diet, is getting more of these plant-based proteins in your diet. So some ways to do that. You could make a vegetarian chili with all different kinds of beans, or even if it was a turkey chili, but you used, again, maybe you just need half a package of ground turkey and do mostly beans and veggies. Vegetable bean soups. So soups are a really easy way to incorporate beans, and they can absolutely be canned beans. You can save yourself some time and use canned beans. They're perfectly healthy. You can rinse them well to reduce the salt content, and certainly buy low salt beans if they're available in your store. Lentil soup is a great option. Using beans in salads, if you eat a lot of salads, but you normally do chicken or another animal protein, you can add chickpeas or another bean, or you can swap out the meat entirely and do beans and or tofu or another plant-based protein. Hummus is made from chickpeas or garbanzo beans, which are a legume. So that's a great way to get more beans in your diet, using it as a snack, a dip for veggies or whole grain crackers, or putting it on sandwiches. Tex-Mex dishes are a great way to incorporate beans, black beans or pinto beans or other beans. Instead of doing turkey taco night, you could do bean tacos, vegetarian tacos, or again, you could do a little ground turkey, but also add the beans and again, work on smaller portions of animal protein. Bean and whole grain bowls. We're seeing a lot of interest in these bowls now, grain bowls nowadays. So oftentimes they'll have beans for a protein component. Vegetarian dals or curries with lentils are a great way to get beans in your diet. And like I mentioned before, there's a lot of great pastas out there that are being made with chickpeas, lentils, black beans. So there's more alternatives for getting beans in your diet. If you don't love them plain, you don't love the texture of the whole beans, maybe one of these bean-based pastas would be a good option for you. And then we also want to try to choose more nutrient-rich snacks. So snacks can be a great opportunity. Most of us have snacks throughout the day. Most people, some people eat just their 3 meals, but a lot of people are eating between meals. Either pattern can be healthy. It depends what you're eating and how much. But we want to try, if you are eating snacks, we want to try to make them mostly an opportunity to eat more whole plant-based foods instead of so-called snack foods, which tend to be more of the refined flours, added sugars, things we're trying to limit. So here are some snacks that are healthy options. A lot of these incorporate those plant-based food groups that we're trying to increase in place of some of the items like cookies, chips, ice cream, donuts, things that don't offer much in the way of nutrition. Again, it's okay to eat these foods occasionally, but we want to try to, most of the time, choose more nutrient-dense snacks that, again, give us more opportunities to check off more of those servings of plant-based foods. So whether it's apple and peanut butter, yogurt with fruit, nuts or a homemade trail mix, edamame, string cheese, fruit, air pop popcorn, trying to choose some of these healthier options. Popcorn is a whole grain and certainly one of the tastiest ones in my opinion. And we also, to reduce cancer risk, we want to focus on limiting red meat. So red meat includes beef, pork, and lamb. Um, and we do see a higher risk of colorectal cancer, in particular, with higher intakes of red meat. So the AICR, the American Institute for Cancer Research, recommends no more than 18 ounces of red meat per week, which, given our portion sizes today, works out to about 2 meals per week of red meat. So trying to stay at or below that is a good goal in terms of reducing your risk for colorectal cancer. So that could mean, again, choosing smaller portions of when you have red meat, eating less of it, maybe in like a stir fry or something, or to stretch it a little bit more, and eating it less often and choosing vegetarian proteins or, leaner protein options like chicken or turkey or fish more often. If you do eat red meat, you want to try to choose the leanest cuts that have less of that unhealthy saturated fat that increases your risk for cholesterol, heart attack. So we want to try to choose cuts with loin or round in them. Those are going to be your leaner options like sirloin, tenderloin, bottom round, top round. And a portion should be about the size of a deck of cards. And when you're preparing your proteins, we do know that cooking animal proteins over high heat and creating these charred bits you see here increases the development of carcinogenic compounds. So trying to use lower heat methods or moisture cooking methods, things like baking, poaching, steaming, rather than frying or grilling, charbroiling when it comes to animal proteins. Also want to limit our intake of processed meats. So the relationship is processed meats are a carcinogen. And we do know that high intake of processed meats again increases the risk for colorectal cancer. So while for red meat, we say no more than 18 ounces per week is the guideline, the American Institute for Cancer Research recommends keeping your intake of processed meats as low as possible. So what are processed meats? They're going to include meats that are cured or smoked or processed in the form of things like ham, bacon, sausage, hot dogs, pepperoni, salami, deli meats, even chicken and turkey deli meats, while they're leaner, they are still processed meats. And even again, turkey sausages, turkey bacon, yes, it's leaner, it has less fat, that's a plus for sure, but it is still a processed meat and something we want to try to limit. And even deli meats that have no added nitrates or no synthetic nitrates or are uncured, we're seeing a lot of that on the market now. And it's unclear at this point. We don't really have enough research on whether these options are safer options because we don't know specifically what in the processed meats is increasing the risk factor. There's a number of things. Is it the high salt intake? Is it the nitrates, these compounds that are often used for curing? Is it the process that they're, the processing that they go through? So we can't say definitively that these are healthier options or that this erases that risk that we see with processed meat. So some quick tips for cutting back on processed meat intake. So at breakfast, that's where we see a lot of the bacon, sausage, things like that. Try to go for other protein options that are not processed meat. So eggs, low-fat yogurt or cottage cheese, nuts, peanut butter or almond butter. At lunch, sandwiches are a big time. We see processed meats, of course, in the form of deli meat. So other options might be a hummus and veggie sandwich, cheese and grilled veggies, tuna, salmon, or chicken salad. So canned tuna, canned chicken is not a processed meat. It's not processed in the same way as these other processed meats, as processed meats. So it is a safe option from that perspective. And then fresh roasted, like you can always get a rotisserie chicken and slice that yourself for sandwiches if you like the convenience of a sandwich and that's something you pack often for lunch, or even doing a peanut butter sandwich. Again, that's a plant-based food and certainly has heart healthy fat. Or you could go another route and do more of a salad or a soup or something in place of a sandwich. At dinner, another place we see those processed meats pop up, of course, pizza toppings. So doing vegetable toppings instead, it's great not only for reducing your risk of or your intake of processed meats, but also adding more produce, right? And also in terms of if you're doing grill nights, doing things like chicken, turkey, veggie, or salmon burgers instead of hot dogs. You can also, we see sausage a lot in different pasta dishes or soups, but in a lot of those you could use ground meat, which is a fresh meat, ground chicken, ground turkey, even ground beef. Those are fresh meats, not processed. So those are a better substitute in recipes. Or even it might be something where you could use beans or lentils. Get a lot of questions about the relationship between sugar and cancer, both from people looking to prevent cancer, from survivors looking to reduce their risk for recurrence. So it's not a simple answer, but a lot of times what I'll hear is, I've heard or read that sugar feeds cancer, and it's certainly not as simple as that. Cancer cells are very metabolically active. They are also very metabolically adaptive. They need carbohydrates, which is sugar or glucose, but they also need fats, and they very much need proteins or amino acids to grow. So they need a mix of nutrients just like our own bodies, and it's not possible. And they are very adaptive, unlike human cells, at getting what they need and making what they need for growth. So much more so than human cells. So it really is not possible to starve cancer cells. That said, it's not, there is an indirect relationship between sugar intake and cancer risk, because we know that a diet high in added sugars can contribute to weight gain. And we do see, as we discussed earlier, a higher risk of many types of common cancer in people who are overweight or obese. So it's really more of this indirect relationship. And when we're talking about added sugars, we're not talking about the sugar in fruit, whole fruit. That's something that's healthy. Again, we see a clear relationship, positive relationship, higher intake of fruits and vegetables, lower risk of cancer. We're talking about added sugars that are added to things like cereals, cakes, cookies, desserts, snack bars, things like that. And of course, the biggest contributor, sugary drinks. These are the types of sugars that it is beneficial to work on cutting down in your diet. You don't have to eat zero added sugar. Okay, it's a good idea to cut back and try to cut down on these. It doesn't mean you have to completely eliminate them from your diet to eat in a healthy way and reduce your risk for cancer. And just to highlight here again, we're talking about added sugars, not the sugar in fruit, which is a natural sugar, and we're not talking about cutting back on whole fruit. But in terms of what are the major sources of added sugar that we do want to reduce in our diet, that biggest bucket, 24% of the added sugar in the US diet is coming from sugar sweetened beverages like soda, juice drinks, flavored waters, coffee drinks, all of those flavored sweetened drinks. Another major contributor is, no surprise, at 19% of our sugar intake is desserts and sweet snacks. So working on cutting back on these, on these food groups that have these added sugar and finding options that have less sugar, when it comes to cereals, oatmeal packets, things like that, there are a lot of brands that are using far less sugar. So we have to be a savvy consumer, but there are better options out there. And then, of course, under this bucket, in terms of reducing added sugar, important to be choosing no or low sugar beverages. So some great options listed here. Things like sparkling or carbonated flavored waters are a great option if you don't love plain water. You can also make spa water by adding herbs, fruit slices, cucumber. You can experiment with all the different kinds of unsweetened hot and iced teas. So there are options out there if you don't love the taste of plain water. You don't have to be drinking just plain water. What about alcohol? So I think that I get so many questions about sugar, and very rarely do I get questions about alcohol, which is, unlike sugar, alcohol is a known group 1 carcinogen. The relationship between alcohol and cancer is very clear. And the American Cancer Society recommends that it is best not to drink alcohol to reduce your risk for cancers. So we see that high intakes, as your intake of alcohol increase, we see increasing risk for many types of cancer: mouth, throat, esophagus, liver, breast, colorectal, And I think it's very interesting because I think a lot of people don't realize this strong link between alcohol intake and cancer, or that it affects so many types of cancer. So I do think we have a lot of learning left and a lot more informing to do on this issue. Um, Somehow this seems to fly under the radar for a lot of people, and they don't associate, or they may know that it increases the risk for certain cancers, but they never realize it increases the risk, say, for colon cancer. So the American Cancer Society recommends that women who choose to drink, have no more than one drink per day, men no more than two drinks per day. But even low levels of alcohol intake have been linked to increased risk of certain cancers, indicating that no amount of alcohol is without risk. Now, that doesn't mean you can never drink, never have a glass of wine, but it does mean being conservative and reducing your intake, is a strategy that you can use to reduce your risk for cancer. And these are showing standard what counts as a drink. So a 12-ounce beer, a 5-ounce glass of wine, or a shot or 1.5 ounces of liquor. So just a couple more slides and then I'll be taking questions. But a lot of questions, another hot topic, are there supplements, are there vitamins I can take to reduce my risk for cancer? And really, as a dietitian, I feel very strongly that it's best to get your nutrients from food. It's best to, there's whole foods provide what you get in a multivitamin is the core basic vitamins and minerals, but not all of the phytonutrients and all of these antioxidants and other things that fruits and vegetables offer. There are hundreds and hundreds of different plant compounds. A vitamin can never mimic what's in whole food. You never get the whole picture. So really, it is best, you're going to get the widest array of phytonutrients when you get them from whole food rather than supplements. And there is no consistent evidence, and this has been studied in large populations, that daily multivitamin or other supplement intake reduce the risk for cancer or recurrence. And we do even see increased intake of, we have even seen increased intake of cancer with some supplements, like beta carotene in higher risk of lung cancer in people who take beta carotene, or even certain minerals we've seen an association with prostate cancer. So supplements are most appropriate if you have specific vitamin and mineral deficiencies. And so if you do have a deficiency in vitamin D, taking a vitamin D supplement, very appropriate. But just, this is the case, this is the appropriate use of supplements. And we just, in terms of just sort of taking a broad array of supplements to reduce your cancer risk, we really don't have evidence to support that that is beneficial or having that effect. And then another big hot topic, eating more, should I be buying organic fruits and vegetables? Will this reduce my cancer risk? The studies on organic versus conventional food and cancer risk are few and far between, and the results have been very mixed. It is a very difficult question to answer from a research angle, because it's very hard to measure an exposure to organic food or categorize people by their organic food intake. It's not something that's easy to measure. And we have sort of these population studies, not clinical trials, or the best type of the highest quality research. We don't really have clinical trials showing whether organic foods reduce cancer risk. But the population studies, the epidemiological studies that have been done have been mixed. Some have shown a benefit, some have not. And what we do have solid evidence to say is that eating more produce, whether it's organic or conventional, does reduce the risk for cancer. And most of these studies that have shown that positive benefit of eating fruits and vegetables, most people are eating conventional fruits and vegetables. So, the overall goal here is to increase your intake of produce. If you're worried about not buying organic and you're eating less produce because you can't afford these costly organic options, that's not helping to reduce your cancer risk. So the best thing is to be eating more servings of fruits and vegetables, whether they're conventional or organic. That is one of the most important things you can do to reduce your cancer risk, and that's what the focus should really be on. If there is a relationship here, and again, to date, evidence is not supporting that, it's not going to be the strong kind of relationship, that big impact that we see for things like processed meat or alcohol. When there's a very strong relationship, it becomes very clear quickly in the research, like it has for those risk factors when it comes to diet. If you're looking for additional resources or recipes, I wanted to share some resources that that I can recommend. The American Cancer Society website does have a lot of information on diet and cancer, both for prevention and survivors. The American Institute for Cancer Research is really a great resource. It's very focused on the nutrition and lifestyle pieces, and they evidence-based information. Everything is backed by good quality, the best research up to date. They're constantly updating their resources. So this is a great resource to check out their website. For healthy recipes and more plant-based recipes, you can check out websites like cookinglight.com, Eating Well, Meatless Monday, but also there's so many great food blogs promoting more plant-based recipes. So there's just infinite resources for recipes out there. I did also want to call it out to the American Institute for Cancer Research's Healthy 10 Challenge, which is something you can sign up for free on their website. And it's just, you'll get weekly or I believe daily newsletters. Each week there'll be a health goal to focus on. They'll email you recipes and things. So it's a great way if you want to take sort of a step-by-step approach to adopting a more plant-based lifestyle and reducing your risk for cancer through diet and lifestyle changes. This is a great kind of starting point. Again, it's like a free group, you'll get weekly newsletters and updates. So that's kind of in a nutshell, the broad strokes of healthy eating and lifestyle changes for cancer prevention, or as I said, if you are a cancer survivor, these recommendations apply to you as well. And I would be happy to take questions. I'm usually, nutrition, it's a hot topic. We get lots of great questions. So I'd love to hear what you want to know more about.
So I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time today, Johanna, for lending your expertise. We do kindly ask that you take a few minutes after today's webinar to complete the program survey. The link to the survey has been added to the chat for your convenience. If you have any additional questions or comments, you can send an email to communityhealth@atlantichealth.org or call 1-844-472-8499. That concludes our webinar. Have a good day, everyone.